Welcome to another Humboldt Tea Time, and we're here today in the beautiful Eureka Visitor Centre. Thank you so much indeed to them for hosting us again today. And my guest today is Gregg Foster,
Good morning.
who's very well known to everybody in Humboldt County, I think. Gregg, you've been...
Oh, I hope.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so or hope not. I'm not sure which.
You are the Executive Director of Development.
Redwood Region Economic Development Commission.
Which is a big title.
It is. They made it up in 1977. Had I been involved then, I would have suggested something catchier.
Well, you have a lot of experience that we're going to talk about today, but first of all, most importantly, do you drink tea?
I do. I do. What are we having this
Well,
morning?
today we're having black tea, and it's quite strong.
Perfect.
This is a very familiar British brand called PG Tips.
Ah.
And it used to be advertised by chimpanzees until they realised that was kind of cruel, and so they stopped doing that. So there is sugar here as well. Thank you very much. I hope
I
you
can
like
do
black.
it. I'll do it straight there.
Now, Gregg, you are a Humboldt native. You grew up here. You've more or less lived here all your life, except when you were away at school.
That's correct.
I think in Sacramento. But I looked on your resume, and I just had to start with this because I thought it was wonderful. Your very first role, at least that you've admitted to, was Solid Waste Policy Director. And I just think, how do you direct solid waste? What was involved in that?
It doesn't involve shouting. This was in the late 80s, and I was working for a nonprofit association of government officials based in Sacramento. And it was when recycling was just really started coming into vogue in California. And so I was working on creating model ordinances and workbooks on how to implement recycling programs in local governments. And then a year or so after I did that, California passed a big landmark recycling bill that required every city and county to divert half of their waste from the waste stream into recycling. And so I predated that a little bit, but then things got really exciting after that
Well, in
passed.
some ways, that's a bit disappointing because I thought solid waste described something completely different. But anyway.
Oh, no. I only dealt with
that.
recyclables. There's solid waste and then there's human waste and other. Yeah, I don't deal with that part.
Unfortunately, that's where my mind
Yeah,
goes,
well, no, fortunately.
But actually, I mean, in the purpose of full disclosure, you've actually worked with us before. You were with Lost Coast Outpost. Well, not Coast Communications.
Yeah, it didn't exist, Lost Coast Outpost, but we did. I was at K-Hum, K-Slug, and The Point. We didn't have the fourth station at the time, from 2007 to 2009. And towards the end of that, we were talking about, hey, we need to be more online. And so the Lost Coast Outpost was born shortly after that, after I left. I was only there for 2 years.
But you were very much involved in the radios.
I was, and more of the sales and business side as well.
So you never had any ambition to be on air?
No.
Because you could have been sitting here.
I could be, but no. I mean, I can be on air, and I've done a lot on air, but never as a vocation.
Okay, well, I don't blame you for that. Yeah. But talking of vocation, you do have a passion about air and air travel.
I did, yeah,
because that's
I
something
do.
that you have pursued separately to your career in many ways.
Well, it was part of REDEC. We did all the air service development in Humboldt County from about 2003 to 2022. What we did, we started very early on in 2003 when we started working with the city of Redding to get our first LAX service, and that was with Alaska. And then subsequent to that, we did recruiting for Delta to Salt Lake City. We also recruited the LAX service to that's running now with United and Denver service, and then worked with the other airlines too. We provided some support to Avello and others when they came in marketing. But in 2022, the county decided they wanted to take over that program. So Fly Humboldt went away. After 19 years of doing that for Humboldt County, I've been not doing that literally in the last 6 months. It's really the county of Humboldt doing it now.
But we had a conversation actually with Cody Rogatz from the airport. He was a great guy, and he chatted to us about the development that's coming up at the airport that's going to happen this year. It's actually going to require a bit of a closure, but I think people are very frustrated with ACV. In fact, we ran a poll, and the majority said they actually will travel to Medford or San Francisco to avoid ACV. It's very frustrating for a lot of people.
It is, and we used to do a lot of public education locally, and I think what people don't know is that the cancellations and diversions really are a very small percentage, but they're what you hear about. And I had friends who would post things, when I had the Fly Humboldt Facebook page, and my flight was delayed or canceled or diverted. And I said, okay, I understand, so I'll make you a deal. You can complain about that as long as you post every time it succeeds. So, we're still above, 80%, I believe, on time, which is actually on the industry level, not really out of the norm, where we are slightly higher as cancellations because of weather and that sort of thing. But this is why you need a really strong public education campaign and providing the data on the actual, because a lot of this is anecdotal. But I've been flying out of here for 32 years. I started when I came back up here, I was in a consulting firm, and my clients were all out of the area, and so I had to fly all the time. And I've been only inconvenienced a couple times. And so, that one time, I'm not denying, is very frustrating for people. But given the realm that we operate in nationally with small airports and the constraints and capacity from the airlines, we're very lucky to have what we have, quite honestly, and it has been doing very well. Velo has been pretty happy with us, and I think the other flights as well. But I'm not. I used to know all the data, and I don't have access to it anymore. So that's really up to the county to educate people on that now.
But it does, of course, have an impact on the economy.
Absolutely,
And that, of course, is your main role these days, because
yes.
as the Executive Director of Economic Development. So everything sort of dovetails. So I think it's very interesting that you've sort of pursued your passion. You're obviously very interested in air travel and air flight, and you've dovetailed that with your current role. Yeah,
and it really came about when I was at a conference in San Diego around the year 2000, 2001, and I was speaking to an editor from the San Diego Business Journal, and we were talking about how to attract small companies up to here, and he says, I only want to know two things. I want to know about your air service and your broadband. And so when I came back, I started working with the airport. And then I also had been working a little bit, but gotten really involved with an organization that no longer exists called the Redwood Technology Consortium. And we became very involved in trying to get the first fiber optic line here. And then in 2007, ironically, I was working at Las Coast Communications, and Patrick Cleary and I, there had been some work here, and the county had done some work about trying to get a second fiber optic line here. And Patrick Cleary and I contacted PG&E and said, hey, we have a crazy idea. And PG&E says, that's really not that crazy. Mm-hmm. And so we started working with Pacific Gas and Electric, who then introduced us to a fiber installer company that they had been working with, and we spearheaded the development of a second fiber optic line, which came over Highway 36, and formed a really good partnership with Humboldt State at the time. Connie Stewart got really involved, was able to develop funding, and that second fiber optic line was opened up in 2011. And that allowed us to avoid having these region-wide outages of broadband because of a fiber break. So yeah, that was a fun project too.
It does seem very stable now.
Yes,
something you should definitely be proud of. In your
well, it was a very important project because we had 4 region-wide outages in a year, and you don't get any warning of that, right? All of a sudden, just nothing works, from 911 to plain old telephone service to credit cards, ATMs, everything just goes off right away. And so it actually helped to have that happen a few times, because that really spurred the effort to get the second one built.
Now, what was it that drove you passionate, in your terms of your passion, to take on this role? Where did that drive come from within you to say, you know what, this is where I want to be, this is how I want to help the county?
That's a good question, yeah. That assumes there was some thought put into it. But, I was born and raised here. I grew up down in southern Humboldt, in Miranda, population 350. And I was always very involved, even as a kid. I was always on the student councils and doing all that kind of stuff. I moved back here in 1991 after a few years of working down in the Sacramento area. And at the time, I was doing a little bit of work here, but most of my work was outside the area. And that was a kind of a tumultuous time here. We really saw the economy, struggling for a variety of reasons, but primarily the shrinking of the timber industry and the logging and other things. And, I've always been a very community-minded person, volunteer. And so the position at REDEC kind of opened up. I was working at the Humboldt Area Foundation at the time. And I decided to apply for that position at REDEC and got it. I've quit twice.
I was going to say, yes, you've been there a couple of times.
But I've come back, I came back both times. And so this is my third stint and I've been there since in the third stint of the reign of Gregg III. Been there since 2015.
Which is quite a long time.
Yes, I mean, you think about it, I've been there, off and on since 1999, so up just shy of 24 years now. And it's really kind of an exciting time here because 25 years ago or 20 years ago, we were trying to figure out how to stop this rapid disinvestment that was going on. We had a lot of excess labor, we had cheap housing, we had a lot of people being laid off. We didn't have anybody really investing in large projects here. And 24 years later, now we're really in a much different space, right? With the wind energy and Nordic and Cal Poly, these are all major investments, which are great opportunities, and of course bring on a lot of new challenges.
Yes, because you mentioned just a moment ago, and you're absolutely right, the way the economy has changed here is huge. Industries that were once the bedrock of the county and the cities have completely disappeared almost, or are not as important as they used to. But it's your role to discover how we can develop other things that replace them. Yeah,
the timber industry is still a major part of the economy, but it is not the dominant single sort of thing that drives it like it used to be. My role, and I think economic development's role is to create the conditions that bring in investment, right? That's primarily infrastructure, connections, access to markets. For me, that's why I went back to that earlier story where, when I talked to this person from out of the area and said, what do you need? And it's like, I know your broadband and your air service. And it's really sort of the 21st century, that was just turning the 21st century then. It's like, well, we really need to invest in 21st century infrastructure, whether it be transportation or whatever else. And infrastructure not only moving goods, but moving ideas and technology. And so I think, we saw a lot of improvement in the area, or conversely, we wouldn't have seen it if we hadn't really pushed on creating a sort of a stable broadband environment. People just can't do business if their broadband is unreliable, and we knew that 20 years ago, and of course that's exponentially more true now.
And how does the organization work with all the various different components? I mean, you talked about the expansion of Cal Poly Humboldt. Obviously, that's a huge impact on this
Right.
area and a great opportunity, but they operate very much within their own world.
Correct.
At the same time, and obviously you had to deal with the city councils, and then there's the board of supervisors. How does it all dovetail together so you can make progress?
Well, we have two interesting, we have sort of our programmatic side, which is us going out and trying to educate and advocate on issues or projects. But our core program and what funds ourselves is our small business loan program. And so we have about a little over 50 small businesses and organizations in our portfolio now. And we manage our own portfolio, and we invest in businesses who can't get their resources from traditional banks or credit unions and things like that. And so, our most direct touch is that we invest in small businesses. And, just within, a few blocks of here, we've probably put close to $5 million in the last 5-6 years, from the Eagle House to Dick Taylor to Eureka Books to, all around here, the new hostel across the street from the shanty up there over on 3rd Street. These are all projects we've invested in. The Carson Block up the street. And so I think that's really important that we, there's a lot of people focusing energy on, responding or working directly with Cal Poly or Google or whoever else. But there's this whole other universe of things that need to happen, and that's where we kind of live. And we also represent the whole county. And so while there's a lot of excitement around the development around Humboldt Bay, we do see places like Orick and Southern Humboldt and Willow Creek and some of our more isolated communities that may not be getting the attention that they need. And we like to advocate for them back here in the hubs. And I guess that's a personal passion, if for no other reason than I grew up on a dirt road in Southern Humboldt, right? And I know that we can be forgotten when you get out to the area. So we advocate for that too.
Well, I'm sure they appreciate that. And of course, the last couple of years, so many small businesses were desperately impacted
Correct.
by the whole pandemic, etc. So that must have made your resources stretched, but also they must have relied on you enormously to keep them going.
They did. And we were really fortunate, and the federal government helped recapitalize and expand our loan program with another $5 million. So that allowed us to be a little more assertive, and they provided some operational support for us during the time. So one of the first things we did was put in a small business loan program of $25,000. We did that. We made our first loan on March 24th, which is like a week after the shutdown. And we did about 30 of those loans. So we did about 750,000 plus or minus of the various different emergency loans that we did. And that kind of gave these business, and we did this with other entities, the city of Arcata and AEDC. So we all kind of agreed to do the same kind of loan with the same terms. And we threw that out there quickly. We were able to fund a lot of people quickly. And that allowed them to have some operating capital because they got shut down immediately. That allowed them to have some operating capital to sort of limp along until the various SBA and other federal government programs became available. But that direct assistance we got from the Economic Development Administration, that allowed us to because we relied on the cash flow to survive. We don't get direct support from anybody. We were able to allow a lot of our businesses to defer their payments. So they didn't have to pay on their loans for many months. And as a result, we were able to, I think we only lost 2 out of our portfolio, really, out of the 50 or so that we had at the time.
That's surprising. I would have thought there would have been more. So
well, I thought so too, yeah. But we did a lot to, and not all are fully recovered. I mean, this is a ripple that's still going through. But we were able to work with them a lot and keep them going, and that's our job, right? We have a mission, which is important, but we also have a need to have a margin to stay alive, and so balancing that mission and margin is a difficult thing sometimes.
And the future, how are things looking? Is it very positive? You have a positive outlook for the county and
I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have a positive outlook, right? Again, I wouldn't have moved back here if I didn't think this was a positive place. Yes, we have. I mean, we are seeing investments coming that we haven't seen probably ever in this size, but certainly not since perhaps the building of the Ruth Lake Dam and the creation of the infrastructure to support the pulp mills, and that was 57, 58, 60 years ago. So I am. We have a lot of challenges as a result, though, and so that's where I think we need to really focus on housing being a big one, and it's something we've been working on since 2015-16, when we really started having some educational forums and discussions around housing, because even then we saw that it was a big issue. So there's a lot of challenges. We got to make sure that the folks out in the hinterlands aren't forgotten, and we need to make sure that all this investment that's coming can be absorbed, and that we have sufficient labor force. And that folks still can afford to live here and that sort of thing. So those are all good challenges. We're in a good place to be, where we're trying to figure out how to handle and manage investment and growth that's going to ultimately benefit the community. And so in my, I don't know that I'll quit ever again, but I may retire here in 10 years or so, and maybe by then we'll have a even better place to live.
Well, that's great. Well, we'll probably grow all gracefully here together.
There we go. Well, gracefully would be nice. Certainly growing old,
yes.
Absolutely.
How's the tea?
It was very good, yeah.
Is it a bit strong, actually? I think I poked the bag a bit too strong.
Well, I drink very strong coffee usually, so yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, the trouble is with me drinking, I've drunk black tea and black coffee all my life, so I have sort of orange-coloured teeth, which is a bit of a problem when you're on camera, but there you go.
Well, one of my first jobs out of college was for the National Cooperative Business Association, and I worked. A friend of mine ran the office in the West Coast, and he worked out of his home, and so he was from England, and so every day at 4 we stopped for English breakfast tea and biscuits, but laden with coffee with cream and sugar.
Ah, right. Well, yeah, I've always drunk it black, but I used to take sugar.
Yeah.
I always bring the sugar for any guest, but I've stopped taking it.
No, so this is perfect.
It's always good to meet another tea drinker.
There you go.
Well, Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Really enjoyed meeting you. Thank you for sharing
here in
your vision.
Beautiful Eureka Visitor Center.
It
Bit
is.
of a sauna in here right now.
It is right now. We do need to get the door open, but it is a beautiful space. You're absolutely right, and I do want to again say thank you very much to them for hosting us today.
Yes.
Greg, thank you for being our guest for
Oh,
Humboldt Tea
pleasure.
Time.
I look forward to seeing it.
It will be on the site very soon, and
Great.
we'll look forward to that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for another Humboldt Tea Time, and join us again very soon. Bye-bye.